The night didn't begin with tension. It began with a heartbeat. Slow, steady, certain. High above the glowing skyline, the grand ballroom of Valeon Industries shimmered like something out of a dream. Crystal chandeliers scattered golden light across marble floors. Silk gowns brushed softly against polished surfaces. Laughter rose in elegant waves, mixing with the clinking of champagne glasses. But beneath the glitter, power moved quietly. And tonight, power was watching her. Isabella Laurent stood at the center of it all, poised, breathtaking, untouchable. Her silver gown flowed like liquid moonlight. Diamonds rested gently against her collarbone. Her posture was straight, confident, almost regal. But strength, when worn too often, can grow heavy. Across the room, Daniel Hart watched her. Not the CEO. Not the billionaire heiress. Just her. Daniel wasn't meant to notice beauty tonight. As head of security for Valeon Industries, his job was simple. Scan the exits, monitor the crowd, anticipate threats before they happen. He was good at that, because life had trained him well. Raising a daughter alone after losing his wife had taught him awareness. Responsibility. Quiet resilience. He understood protection. He understood what it meant to stand guard for something precious. And for reasons he couldn't explain. Tonight, his instincts kept pulling him toward Isabella. She looked strong. But strength and loneliness often wear the same mask. The orchestra shifted into a softer melody. Investors gathered near the marble staircase, voices lowered, but not low enough. She doesn't belong here. Daniel's gaze sharpened. A group of senior investors stood too close, their smiles thin, their arrogance louder than the music. She's too young. Too emotional. Valeon needs stability, not sentiment. The words slid through the air like polished knives. Isabella stood only a few steps away. She didn't react, didn't turn, didn't defend herself. But Daniel saw it. The slight tightening of her fingers around her champagne glass. The controlled inhale. The quiet endurance of someone who has heard this too many times. He felt something shift inside him. Not anger. Something deeper. Disrespect had a smell. And he recognized it. One of the investors stepped forward, voice smooth but sharp underneath. Maybe it's time Valeon had a stronger presence at the top. That was the moment. The invisible line. Daniel didn't think. He moved. His polished shoes crossed the marble floor with calm precision. Conversations dimmed as his tall frame stepped beside her. Isabella felt him before she saw him. Steady. Solid. Close. She's with me. The words weren't loud, but they carried. The music seemed to pause. The laughter faded. Eyes turned. The investor blinked. Excuse me. Daniel's expression remained composed. Professional. Controlled. If you have concerns, he continued evenly, I'm sure the boardroom is a more appropriate place to discuss them. Silence. Not awkward. Electric. Isabella turned slowly, her eyes meeting his for the first time that evening. Surprise flickered there. Then something else. Relief. He wasn't touching her. Wasn't claiming her. Wasn't overstepping. He was simply standing there. Beside her. Where no one else had. The investor cleared his throat. This is corporate business, mister? Hart, Daniel replied. Head of security. A subtle reminder. He wasn't bored. He wasn't executive. But he wasn't small either. The investor gave a tight smile. Security should remain neutral. Daniel didn't blink. Security ensures respect. The tension snapped like a pulled thread. A few guests looked away first. Then another. The investor stepped back, unwilling to escalate publicly. The conversation dissolved. But the moment lingered. Isabella exhaled slowly. You didn't have to do that, she murmured without looking at him. Her voice was softer up close. Human. I know, Daniel replied. That was it. No dramatic confession. No bold declaration. Just quiet certainty. Across the ballroom, unseen by most, an older man in a tailored black suit watched with careful attention. Victor Laurent. Founder. Visionary. Majority shareholder of Valeon Industries. And Isabella's father. His face betrayed nothing. But his eyes sharpened. He had spent decades building empires. He recognized courage when he saw it. He also recognized risk. Daniel felt it before he saw it, the weight of being observed. His instincts shifted. He glanced across the room and locked eyes with Victor for half a second. Long enough. A silent evaluation passed between them. Isabella followed his gaze. Her shoulders stiffened slightly. My father, she said quietly. Daniel nodded once. I assumed. The orchestra resumed. Conversations restarted. The gala pretended nothing had happened. But something had changed. Isabella stepped away from the crowd toward the balcony doors. Daniel hesitated. Professional boundaries whispered caution. But something else urged him forward. The balcony air was cooler. The city below glittered like fallen stars. She rested her hands lightly on the railing. For what it's worth, she said, eyes on the skyline. I'm used to it. That doesn't make it right. A faint smile touched her lips. You're very certain for someone who just challenged half the board. I didn't challenge them. He stepped beside her again. This time, closer. I reminded them. She turned to look at him fully now. Up close, her strength looked different. Less armor. More heart. Why? She asked softly. The question carried more weight than it seemed. Why defend me? Why risk your position? Why stand beside me? Daniel didn't answer immediately. Because the truth surprised even him. I have a daughter, he said finally. And I hope that one day, if she's ever standing alone in a room like that, someone will stand beside her. Isabella's breath caught. Not because it was romantic, but because it was real. For the first time that night, her composure cracked just enough to reveal vulnerability beneath. You're different, Mr. Hart. Daniel, he corrected gently. A beat of silence passed between them. Soft. Warm. Charged. Inside the ballroom, Victor continued to watch from behind the glass doors. He saw the way Daniel positioned himself, protective but respectful. He saw the way Isabella's posture shifted, not weakened, but steadied. Victor's lips curved almost imperceptibly. Interesting. Back on the balcony, Isabella straightened. You may have just complicated your career. Daniel allowed the faintest hint of a smile. I've handled worse. Have you? His eyes met hers. Yes. The city lights reflected in her gaze. And for a fleeting second, the CEO wasn't thinking about shareholders. And the single father wasn't thinking about job security. They were simply two people standing beneath the same night sky, connected by one choice. One sentence. She's with me. Inside, the gala continued as if nothing extraordinary had happened. But power had shifted. Not loudly. Not publicly. Quietly. Because sometimes the most dangerous thing in a room full of politics is a man who refuses to step back. And somewhere behind the glass, a father decided this story was far from over. The night that changed everything had only just begun. The morning after the gala felt quieter than it should have. Too quiet. Daniel Hart stood in the kitchen of his modest apartment, tying his daughter Lily's shoelaces while she hummed a song from school. Sunlight filtered through thin curtains, warm and ordinary. Ordinary. That was the word he preferred. Not ballrooms. Not billionaires. Not power plays hidden behind champagne smiles. Daddy, are you in trouble? Lily asked suddenly, studying him with eyes far too observant for her age. Daniel paused. Kids always knew. He forced a small smile. Why would I be in trouble? You look like when the teacher calls you. He chuckled softly and kissed her forehead. I'll be fine. But even as he said it, his phone vibrated on the counter. Unknown number. He picked it up after dropping Lily at school. A single message. Mr. Hart. My office. 9 a.m., Victor Laurent. No greeting. No explanation. Just authority. The top floor of Valeon Industries felt different from the rest of the building. Quieter. Colder. Power didn't need noise here. Daniel stepped out of the elevator into a private corridor lined with dark wood and abstract art. The assistant outside the large double doors didn't smile. Mr. Laurent is expecting you. Of course he was. The doors opened. Victor Laurent stood near the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the entire city. From this height, everything looked small. Manageable. Controlled. Mr. Hart, Victor said without turning around. Daniel stepped forward. Sir. Silence stretched. Measured. Victor finally faced him. In daylight, he looked even sharper, silver hair perfectly styled, posture straight, gaze piercing. You embarrassed investors last night. Daniel remained calm. I corrected disrespect. Victor's expression didn't change. She doesn't need rescuing. I didn't rescue her. No. Victor stepped closer. You placed yourself beside her publicly. You made a statement. Daniel met his eyes steadily. The statement was simple. And that is, that she doesn't stand alone. The air shifted. Victor studied him carefully now, not as an employee. As a variable. You are head of security, Victor continued. You are paid to remain neutral. Neutrality and silence are not the same thing. A faint flicker of approval passed through Victor's eyes, but vanished quickly. You have a daughter, Victor said calmly. Daniel stiffened slightly. Yes. Then you understand protection. Daniel didn't respond. Victor stepped back toward the window. You see, Mr. Hart, this company is not a ballroom drama. It is war. Investors smell weakness. They create narratives. And last night, you gave them one. Daniel's jaw tightened. With respect, sir, the narrative already existed. Victor turned sharply. And what narrative is that? That your daughter must prove herself twice as hard to be considered half as capable. Silence. Heavy. Unavoidable. Victor's gaze hardened. You are bold. I'm honest. Another long pause. Then Victor did something unexpected. He smiled. Not warmly. Not kindly. Calculatingly. Tell me, Mr. Hart, what exactly are your intentions toward my daughter? The question landed like a test. Daniel answered without hesitation. I don't have intentions. Yet you stood beside her. Yes. You risked your career. Yes. Why? Daniel took a breath. Because this answer mattered. Because respect shouldn't depend on titles. Victor watched him closely. And if standing beside her costs you everything? Daniel didn't look away. Then it was still worth it. That answer lingered. Victor returned to his desk and sat down slowly. You may go. No threat. No warning. Which was somehow more unsettling. As Daniel reached the door, Victor spoke again. One more thing, Mr. Hart. Daniel turned. Be careful where loyalty turns into attachment. The message was clear. This wasn't just about business. This was personal. Later that evening, Isabella stood alone in her office. The city glowed beyond the glass walls. Her heels were off. Her posture less guarded. She had heard about the meeting. Of course she had. Her father controlled everything. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Come in. Daniel stepped inside. For a moment, neither spoke. You survived, she said lightly. Barely. She studied him carefully. He threatened you. No. She frowned. That's worse. He smiled faintly. He asked about my intentions. Her expression shifted. And what did you say? That I didn't have any. A subtle tension filled the space. And do you? The question was quiet. Dangerous. Daniel stepped closer, not too close, but enough that the air between them warmed. I respect you, he said honestly. That's all. Isabella searched his face for something hidden. She found none. Only sincerity. You shouldn't stand beside me, she whispered. Why? Because my world is complicated. He tilted his head slightly. So is mine. She laughed softly at that. And for a second, they weren't CEO and employee. They were two exhausted adults navigating impossible expectations. My father doesn't test people unless he sees something, she said. And what does he see? In you. She paused. Threat. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Or potential. Silence wrapped around them again, softer this time. Charged. Unspoken. Outside the office glass, the building lights dimmed as employees left for the night. Inside, neither moved. You shouldn't risk your job for me, Isabella said gently. Daniel looked at her the same way he had on the balcony. Steady. Grounded. I'm not risking it for you. Her heart skipped slightly. I'm risking it for what's right. That answer somehow meant more. Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. You realize my father is watching everything now. Daniel's gaze didn't waver. Let him. For the first time since the gala, Isabella felt something unfamiliar. Not pressure. Not scrutiny. Safety. And that frightened her more than anything. Because safety made you lower your guard. And lowering your guard made you vulnerable. Across the city, in his penthouse office, Victor Laurent looked at security footage from the hallway outside Isabella's office. He didn't need audio. Body language told him enough. Daniel wasn't reaching. Wasn't pushing. Wasn't overstepping. He was standing. Again. Victor leaned back in his chair slowly. Interesting. Very interesting. Back in the office, Isabella finally stepped away. You should go, she said softly. Daniel nodded. But before leaving, he paused at the door. If anyone questions you again. She looked at him. I'll be there. He left quietly. The door closed. Isabella stood alone again, but the loneliness felt different now. Because somewhere in this building, a man had chosen not to step back. And somewhere above them, a father had begun planning his next move. The line had been crossed. And this time, there would be consequences. The rumors began on a Monday. They always do. Quiet whispers in elevators. Lingering glances in hallways. Conversations that stop the second someone walks in. The CEO and the single dad. Security seems close to management lately. Victor won't allow that. Daniel heard it all. He didn't react. But he felt the shift. Respect had turned into speculation. And speculation inside a corporation like Valeon Industries was more dangerous than open conflict. Isabella pretended not to notice. But pretending required strength. And strength requires energy. By Wednesday evening, her office lights were still on long after everyone had left. The city skyline glowed against the glass walls, painting her silhouette in gold and shadow. She stared at the quarterly projections without really seeing them. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. She didn't look up. "Come in." Daniel stepped inside. No jacket tonight. Just his white shirt with sleeves slightly rolled, waistcoat still sharp, tie loosened, like a man who had been holding his breath all day. "You're still here," he said quietly. "So are you." "I make rounds." She gave a faint smile. "Of course you do." Silence settled between them, not awkward, but heavy with everything unsaid. After a moment, she closed the file in front of her. "My father called an emergency board review." Daniel's expression didn't change. "When?" "Friday." "That's sudden." "It's intentional." He stepped closer to the desk. "They are questioning your performance." "No," she replied calmly. "They are questioning my judgment." The air tightened. Daniel understood immediately. This wasn't about profits. Valeon had broken records last quarter. This was about narrative. About control. About whether Isabella Laurent stood alone or not. She stood and walked toward the window, crossing her arms lightly. "They think I'm distracted," she continued softly. Daniel's jaw tightened. "By what?" She turned to face him. "You." The word landed gently, but carried weight. For a moment, neither moved. Daniel didn't apologize. Didn't retreat. "Are you?" he asked quietly. Her breath caught. Not because she didn't know the answer, but because she did. "I don't know," she admitted. That honesty changed something. She wasn't speaking as CEO now. She was speaking as a woman who hadn't let anyone close in years. "My father believes attachment creates weakness," she said. "And what do you believe?" She studied him carefully. "I believe isolation creates loneliness." The confession lingered in the air between them. Daniel stepped closer, close enough now that she could see the quiet strength in his eyes. "Isabella," he said softly, "I don't want to be a complication in your life." "You're not." Her answer came too quickly. She noticed. He noticed. The tension deepened. "I stood beside you because it was right," he continued. "Not because I expect anything." "I know." "Then why does this feel like a battle?" She looked past him, toward the door. "Because my father doesn't test people unless he's planning something." As if summoned by the mention of him, her office phone buzzed. She didn't need to look. She knew. She picked it up. "Yes." Silence. Then her expression hardened slightly. "Understood." She hung up slowly. "Board meeting moved up," she said. "Tomorrow morning." Daniel's gaze sharpened. "They are accelerating." "Yes." She took a breath. "He wants to see how I respond under pressure." "And you will." She gave him a faint, tired smile. "I always do." But tonight, something felt different. The weight wasn't just corporate. It was personal. Later that night, as Daniel walked toward the elevator, he noticed someone waiting near the lobby exit. Victor Laurent. Alone. No assistants. No board members. Just a father and a strategist. "Mr. Hart," Victor said calmly. Daniel stopped. "Sir." Victor walked slowly beside him toward the glass doors. "You seem to be around my daughter often." "My role requires visibility." Victor gave a slight nod. "And loyalty." Daniel met his gaze. "Yes." Victor studied him carefully. "You realize the board will question her leadership tomorrow." "I assumed." "They will suggest she lacks objectivity." Daniel's expression remained steady. "She doesn't." Victor's eyes narrowed slightly. "You speak with certainty." "I've seen her work." "And you believe you strengthen her position." Daniel paused before answering. "I believe I don't weaken it." Victor stopped walking. So you think standing beside her makes her stronger? Daniel held his ground. No. I think knowing she isn't alone does. That answer lingered. Victor's face remained unreadable. But something in his posture shifted, almost imperceptibly. Be careful, Mr. Hart, Victor said softly. The line between loyalty and attachment is thin. Daniel didn't flinch. Only if someone intends to cross it. Victor gave him one last long look, then turned and walked away. Back upstairs, Isabella stood alone in her office again. She hadn't left. She couldn't. The board review documents were open in front of her, pages filled with performance metrics, risk assessments, leadership evaluations. She had built this company's new era with precision. And yet tomorrow, they would question her stability, her judgment, her strength. There was a soft knock again. She didn't turn this time. You don't have to keep checking on me, she said gently. Daniel stepped inside anyway. I'm not checking on you. She raised an eyebrow. I'm standing nearby. Her lips curved slightly. That again. Standing beside her. It wasn't loud. Wasn't dramatic. But it felt powerful. You should go home, she said. I will. But he didn't move. She walked toward him slowly. Close enough now that the air between them felt charged. Daniel, she whispered, if this damages your career. It won't. You don't know that. He looked at her with quiet certainty. I've built my life from nothing once already. I can do it again. That wasn't arrogance. It was truth. Her voice softened. You shouldn't have to. For the first time, the space between them felt fragile. One step closer and it would become something undeniable. Something neither of them was ready to define. Instead, Daniel took a half step back, respecting the boundary. Always. You'll win tomorrow, he said. She searched his face. How are you so sure? Because they underestimate you. Her heart steadied slightly. And you? He held her gaze. I don't. Silence fell again, but this time, it wasn't heavy. It was intimate. Outside the glass walls, the city shimmered beneath the night sky. Inside, two people stood on the edge of something neither had planned. And somewhere in the building's shadows, Victor Laurent was watching the pieces move into place. Tomorrow wouldn't just test Isabella's leadership. It would test Daniel's resolve. And perhaps, it would reveal whether standing beside someone is an act of loyalty, or the beginning of love. Morning arrived without softness. The sky above Valeon Industries was pale and unforgiving, like the kind of day that demanded decisions. Inside the executive boardroom, the air felt colder than usual. Long glass table, leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Power had a scent in this room, polished wood and quiet ambition. Isabella Laurent entered first. Silver-gray suit, hair perfectly set, expression calm, armor on. Board members sat waiting. Investors lined the far side. Legal advisors whispered in low tones. At the head of the table sat Victor Laurent. Still, observing. Daniel stood near the back wall, officially present as head of security. Unofficially present for something else. Their eyes met briefly. No words. Just understanding. The meeting began. Let's address recent concerns, one investor said smoothly. Leadership perception. Public optics. Stability. Translation, Isabella folded her hands on the table. Our quarterly profits increased by 18%, she said calmly. Expansion into European markets exceeded projections. Employee retention improved. Another board member leaned forward. Performance is not the issue. Then what is? She asked evenly. A pause. Then the blade slid in politely. Executive distractions. The room went still. Isabella didn't look toward Daniel. She didn't need to. Victor finally spoke, his voice measured and composed. Leadership requires clarity. Decisions must be made without emotional interference. A few subtle glances shifted toward the back of the room. Daniel felt it. The narrative forming. He could remain silent. That would be professional. That would be safe. But safety had never built anything meaningful. Isabella straightened. Are you questioning my competence? She asked her father directly. I'm questioning vulnerability, Victor replied. A faint murmur moved through the room. The implication was clear. Her connection to Daniel was being framed as weakness. Daniel's hands tightened slightly behind his back. He could see it now, the test. Not just of her. Of him. If he stepped back now, the narrative would solidify. If he stepped forward, he would challenge the architecture of the room. He moved. Not dramatically. Not recklessly. Just one step forward from the wall. With respect, Daniel said calmly. Valeon has broken profit records under Ms. Laurent's leadership. The room froze. A board member frowned. This is not a security matter, Mr. Hart. Daniel's posture remained composed. No, it's a leadership matter. Victor's eyes locked onto him. Sharp. Evaluating. You forget your position, Victor said evenly. Daniel met his gaze without aggression. No, sir. I remember it clearly. Silence thickened. I protect this company, Daniel continued. That includes protecting its leadership from unfounded narratives. A ripple moved across the table. Isabella's breath caught almost imperceptibly. Victor leaned back slowly in his chair. And what narrative is that? He asked. That strength requires isolation, Daniel answered. No one spoke. Daniel continued, steady as stone. Ms. Laurent has delivered measurable results. If her professionalism is being questioned because someone stood beside her publicly, then the issue is perception, not performance. The room felt electric. Board members shifted in their seats. Investors exchanged looks. No one expected the head of security to articulate what others avoided. Victor's expression darkened for a fraction of a second. Then something changed. He stood, walked slowly around the table. The sound of his polished shoes echoed softly against the marble floor. He stopped directly across from Daniel. You're willing to risk your career for this? Victor asked quietly. Daniel didn't hesitate. I'm willing to stand where I believe I should. Another pause. Heavy. Measured. Then Victor did something no one expected. He smiled. Not mockingly. Not coldly. Proudly. Good, he said. The room blinked. Confusion spread like a wave. Victor turned to the board. I built Valeon Industries from nothing, he said calmly. And I did not build it on fear. He faced Isabella now. You have delivered results beyond expectation. Then his gaze shifted briefly to Daniel. And you inspire loyalty. A subtle shift rippled through the room. This was no longer an accusation. It was an acknowledgement. Victor returned to his seat. Meeting adjourned. Just like that, the tension snapped. Board members rose slowly, unsure how the battlefield had turned into a lesson. Investors murmured in low tones as they exited. Within minutes, the room emptied. Until only 3 remained. Victor, Isabella, Daniel. Silence settled again, but softer this time. Victor studied them both carefully. I wanted to see, he said quietly, who would remain when pressure increased. Isabella frowned slightly. You orchestrated this. I accelerated it, he corrected. She stepped closer to him. You doubted me. Victor's expression softened, barely. I never doubted your capability. Then what? I doubted whether you would choose strength or attachment. Her eyes flickered toward Daniel. Victor followed the glance. And now? She asked. Victor looked at Daniel one last time. You did not overstep, he said calmly. You did not exploit. You did not retreat. Daniel held his gaze respectfully. No, sir. Victor nodded once. Interesting. That word again. Then he turned and walked toward the exit. But before leaving, he paused. Without looking back, he said quietly. Valeon is stronger when its leaders are not alone. The door closed behind him. Silence. Real silence. Isabella exhaled slowly, the weight of weeks releasing from her shoulders. Daniel stepped closer, not as security, not as defense, just as himself. You handled that well, he said gently. She gave a soft, almost disbelieving laugh. I nearly lost my company. You didn't. She looked at him. Because you spoke. He shook his head. No, because you're capable. A moment passed between them, quieter than any before. The sunlight now streamed through the tall windows, warm and golden. The battle was over. But something else had begun. She stepped closer. Close enough that the space between them felt intentional. You didn't step back, she said softly. No. Why? He held her gaze, steady and honest. Because some people are worth standing beside. Her breath trembled slightly. Not from fear. From feeling. For the first time since the gala. She didn't feel watched. Or tested. Or judged. She felt chosen. Not claimed. Chosen. And Daniel, standing there in the quiet aftermath, realized something too. This wasn't about protecting a CEO anymore. It was about respecting a woman who carried the weight of an empire, and still stood tall. Outside the boardroom windows, the city continued moving, unaware that inside, power had shifted. A father had approved, a woman had proven herself, and a man had refused to step back. Sometimes the strongest statement in a room full of ambition is simply staying.